Hey the rulers, DMO73 here, bringing you a feature match between Robert Strong and his Deus Ex Machina, utilizing things like falling into the cracks at time, versus myself, piloting a little Mika Token Spam. Let's see who comes out on top and jump right into the lesson. This lesson brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for product, and fowtlibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists. It's also brought to you by our guest lecturer patrons, Vite Ramen. Class is in session. As we jump in here, rulers, just want to give you a reminder once again about the Force of Will Festival coming up in November 5th and 6th, Radisson Hotel, Kalamazoo, Michigan. It is going to be absolutely insane. We are currently at over $25,000 worth of stuff to give away, as well as cash prizing and placing down through top 64. It's going to be insane. You're not going to want to miss it. Go ahead and check the links in the description to get into that. So today we have myself playing the Mika Token Spam. It is kind of really leaning on Mika's natural kind of utility suite, as well as some Wanderer Splash to kind of facilitate helping her contract faster. I really wanted to look at what does the Mika package do, and I'm playing against Robert, playing Deus Ex Machina, utilizing falling into the cracks at time because of its amazing utility in this meta of just saying, hey, you're trying to put a bunch of one drops out, let's just not. One thing to keep in mind also is that both of these lists are, or at least I'm pretty sure at least the Mika Token Spam list is currently operating under the FowFest ban list. We are currently playing, we have announced this week that we are banning Origins of the Seven Lands and Warhorse for the main event of FowFest. That being said, neither of those cards really actually facilitate much of Mika's stuff. She doesn't have a lot of search, she has a lot of draw power, and she really doesn't need the extra will or ramp ahead, so didn't really make sense to plug it in there anyway. We're going to start with Solaris, the Religious Nation. This helps us get access to all of our tokens quickly, and we also get Gleipnir, the Red Binding String of Fate. Gleipnir is a wonderful addition because it can force our opponent's stuff to block, which means we can give both sides a token off the addition, force their token to block our token, kill them both, and set up the contract. That's kind of the whole idea. It helps us to be able to contract a lot quicker, specifically because the contract says destroy. So banishing the tokens on our side doesn't do anything, and so we need them to be killed, and Gleipnir really helps to facilitate that. Going into Robert's turn, we see that mass-produced knight going to go search. This is one of those situations where if he was playing Warhorse, we could search for 2 and grab a Warhorse, but you'll see in just a second that he does not have it. So we're just going to put out the 1-drop 4/4 and pass the turn most likely there, leaving Will up to be able to interact, maybe through something like falling through the cracks of time. You know, if your opponent has a one-drop heavy deck, you can kind of create this cloud effect that says slow your roll there, not going to have to deal with that aggression for this turn. It's all going to go back into your deck, which can be very, very effective. It does say 1-drops or less, so it also means that all of my tokens will also just fade from existence if I try to generate them. Before recovery, we're going to go ahead and force his mass-produced knight to block, because we do have Cecilia on board, so even though we don't have any tokens to throw under it, we could have him block our Cecilia and then potentially contract. Fragment of the Light Moon there gets to go in and give us a 4C, which is helpful for this deck because it does actually have quite a bit of draw power. Swing in with Cecilia, forces him to block, goes to kill it, and then like you said, I can use that Gleipnir there to now meet the conditions of Decree of Absolution modes to get 2 tokens out onto the field and draw a card, whatever that card is that I either didn't want or the card that I saw that I do want, and we flip into Messiah. We did hit the secret rare Messiah that's in the deck. This is very helpful. I only have 2 stones, so I don't get to target too much, but I can give these 2 tokens I just generated Swiftness and +2/+2 and get in for a little bit of aggression, and also leave a pretty big threat on the board of Messiah, and now suddenly have the ability to potentially do Decree of Absolution. So you can see this deck is certainly more aggressive, and now I'm also in a position where next turn I'm going to be able to generate another token during Robert's turn because Solaris is now live. So Robert's staring down a pretty healthy board here, including a flyer. Does need to find a way to be able to start removing stuff off the board. This looks like he does have a Lancelot there. Unfortunately, Lancelot doesn't do much to a J ruler. So we do see Robert go into the Arthur here. This is helpful because it'll let him draw 3, put 2 back on top, and set him up to be able to use that Lancelot. While Lancelot can't shoot a J ruler with its discard effects, right now I'm only threatening 1800 damage on the board, and he can block one of it, so it's really a follow-up of like what's the next card gonna be, and so Lancelot could be pretty helpful there to deal with the follow-up threat. He also can, if I do generate a token, he gets another token. So he also kind of gets a second blocker. So they essentially kind of negate themselves, although I have ways to be able to get rid of his tokens as well. Especially since I also have a White Child, or Child of the Light Moon's God Art, and Child of the Darkness Moon's God Art to pop things out of the way if I need them. There is a world where I could have used Darkness Child's God's Art in response to Arthur's Enter effect to kill him, so that if he did call stone, it would lock him out of being ordered. But ultimately, it's better to kind of, in the Mika deck, it feels like it's better to use the Darkness Moon Child as like an immediate threat, or to deal with a combat trick to push through damage. Hitting another Light Moon fragment here. Ultimately deciding that we like that card. Oh, and then deciding against it. Maybe it's not that great after all. Playing a Cecilia. Cecilia here to try to kill the token that I gave him and generate another Swiftness body on board. This is a little bit also insane because Cecilia will be a 10-10 angel because I have a ruler under contract, and then when that token dies, she'll become a 12-12 angel with Swiftness for 1, and then I can also banish the other tokens to life gain to Solaris to make Cecilia even bigger. So in this sense, Cecilia can just be a game ender right by herself. We do see that falling into the cracks of time come into the response of Cecilia, say, look, I don't want this coming down this turn. And in response, what we're going to do is go ahead and use Inquisitor to give both players another token. So before that falling into the cracks of time generates, it draws me another card anyway. Cecilia goes back to the bottom of the deck. And now we have this cloud effect for the turn. But because he has 2 tokens, this does set us up to be able to go into another Inquisitor from hand for only 1 white, because he controls 2 tokens. I'll tap down those 2 tokens, so now the only threat on his board is the Arthur. And so we're going to be able to get very, very aggressive this turn. Taps them both down. At that point in time, we have 2 tokens and Messiah that could attack. Messiah does have precision here, and so making sure the stats are what I think they are of the Arthur, we're going to go ahead and use Messiah to kill Arthur. Get that out of the way. This just clears the way once again, and like I said, we don't want to use, we want to save Darkness Moon Child until it's absolutely necessary, just because we're swinging with a lot of 4/4s, and so combat tricks kind of feel like how we close out the game. And so this way, you know, locking down his other blockers permanently, as long as I control the Inquisitor, and then swinging in for 8, taking down to 20, sets us up for a very nice lethal next turn. Very nice protected lethal in the form of, if we really wanted to, we could do Light Child, God's Art at the beginning of the turn, and you know, when we go into my turn, making it so that Robert only gets 1 card potentially, so that we can counterplay. This would be more helpful if the Mika deck was actually playing like counters, but it's not. It's mostly just to say, like, you're only going to be able to kill 1 thing, so that 1 thing better be a board wipe, which in Deus Ex isn't super available. Robert looking at this hand, staring down a board of 4 tokens, an Inquisitor, and a Messiah. No, Deus Ex enters the Games of Gods has certainly been unfortunate. Deus Ex enters would be really good here to kill the Inquisitor or kill the Messiah, particularly because you can kill Messiah with any 0-drop. Also seems to be debating whether or not to call Stone or to order potentially here. There's a world where, based on how he stacked the top of his deck off that Arthur, that an ordered Guinevere could end up being really beneficial here. It's just a matter of, does he remember what that top card of his deck is? Those top 2 cards of his deck are. Robert ultimately seems to be deciding to go into the order for the Guinevere. A good hit off the top here, if we were a little bit earlier in the game, would be the Lancelot. Something like Dolores would be a good grab here, because it would be able to kind of get rid of some of the cards on the board while also setting up some potential bodies, especially since I would be giving... It almost kind of makes me not want to give him a token, because he can rest any Resonator to make Dolores big, and so he can turn his token into a 20/20, which I don't want to do. Ultimately, there is that Lancelot comes into the field, which is helpful to get another body onto the board, and that does give him the potential to be able to shoot stuff should it come into play. Does seemingly pass the turn there. See if there's any follow-ups. Looks like there's a couple Arthurs in that hand. Before recovery, we're going to go ahead and generate 2 tokens, because we can't do it on his turn because we're locked under Guinevere. This is also an opportunity. So this Lancelot, kind of a missed trigger here. When the token is generated, it should trigger Lancelot. I mean, it will trigger Lancelot, but Lancelot specifically says it may, so it is a missed advantageable trigger that Robert missed here to shoot the token. We're going to also attempt to force the Lancelot to block here in the recovery. Down comes that setting the stage of Providence. Just means that, like, if he does have any kind of abilities or anything, I won't be able to cancel them this turn. Also draws him into another card. Looks like that might have been a Knight of Knights potentially drawn there. Doesn't help too much in this situation, unfortunately. Swinging with the Inquisitor, who is a 7/8, forcing his 7/7 Lancelot to block. And playing another fun card that we haven't seen in a bit, really pretty much ever, because it was too difficult to awaken. We get to play Angel of False Hope. Or no, this might be False Glory. It's the one that if you don't awaken it, you lose the game. But we can awaken it, which is great, because we have 2 additional rulers outside of Calling Stone. So we can awaken this and kill his Guinevere as well as my own Gleipnir, because at this point in time it's pretty much served its purpose and generates us 2 flying Fallen Angel tokens. Or 2 angel tokens. Sorry, they're not fallen angels. And then the tokens get to start swinging in, 4 at a time. Here's a little bit of an error here. That token right there should not be able to attack right now, particularly because it was generated this turn. So that's a little bit of an error on my part. Ultimately, though, he's low enough on life that we could just burn him to death with the sealed one-eyed that's in our hand. So we're doing this little silly roundabout thing of using Solaris to banish 2 tokens to gain 400 life each, and then using sealed one-eyed dragon to pay 6 and then burn the token out of the way. We also could have just used Darkness Moonchild to shoot it out of the way, or again, as soon as we get Robert below 600 life, we just use sealed one-eyed dragon to kill it. So a little bit of a roundabout because I don't have swiftness, but that is game 1. We go into game 2. Jumping right into it, Robert choosing to take the draw again. Does go right into an ordered Guinevere. Unfortunately, that top card of his deck is not something particularly effective. He will still be able to cast it. Looks like a setting the stage of Providence. So essentially, it's Guinevere into draw a card. Calls that first stone, hits a water stone. Having that one water source is certainly helpful to be able to potentially do another Falling into the Cracks of Time and stop me from getting that turn 1 token board, especially since I don't have access to Solaris right off the top. You know, I'm going to get to recover it and then have to go into my turn. So if I want to do kind of reactive plays with it, I have to kind of wait. And so Falling into the Cracks of Time is potentially beneficial. During my turn, though, we do have something to be able to kind of set things off in the form of filtering using Light Moonchild to do Inquisitor to generate us each a token to draw a card on my turn. This is before recovery, and so it's kind of like saying, hey, I'm going to still get one of each of these onto the board right now anyway. Do you want to try to stop me? And he says, no, that's fine. That resolves. So no Falling into the Cracks of Time this time. We have another Darkness Moon fragment. This does mean that I won't be able to filter this turn. I've already done it once. I have no way to get to Light Will at this point, but I'm totally fine with that because Solaris is going to help us generate tokens next turn anyway. So what we can do is use Cecilia to try to at least get rid of the token that I have and kind of push some aggression. At that point in time, Robert says, hey, I did have that day Falling into the Cracks of Time, and so that's going to go to the bottom of the deck. I do think there is some justification for maybe having, in response to the Inquisitor, to do the Falling into the Cracks there, but I also can see the merit here of the fact that he got me to burn more will and commit to more cards, only to leave up just a single 4/4. At the end of the turn, we're going to Sealed One-Eyed Dragon just to get that Guinevere out of the way, because we want to be able to generate tokens that can swing, and we also, by using Solaris, and we also want to be able to interact with that 1 will we have available. One thing about the interesting part about Guinevere is the fact that if you order her, she's just immediately applying that tax because you can't respond to order. So there is a world where I just get like taxed out even though I have the 1 will. Ultimately, though, we do see a Call Stone, which makes it so I will at least be able to generate the tokens this turn at worst by tapping out if he plays a Guinevere. We see a mass-produced robot. Knights coming out here. Gonna search him up a couple more copies. This is a very machine-heavy build. Next turn, though, there is one downside in the fact when you're playing against Mika, though, by keeping your hand filled, is the fact that in the Mika engine, and we are using it because of, again, I wanted to show off the most of Mika cards available, we have Decree, the Light of Solari. So the more cards in hand means Light of Solari is going to do more to hurt you more. So mass-produced Knights here might not have been the best decision. The other thing is, does Robert remember that card exists, and does he think I'm going to play it? Swings in for 4. We say that's fine. We could take it. We're going to probably gain some more life here in a minute anyway if we have light, and we can also banish tokens to gain more life back. So that's totally fine. Go down to 3,000. Robert chips the turn to us, and we're going to generate those more tokens. Going into my turn, force the token that can't block to, or that can block to block. Very clearly setting up to try to do a Decree of Absolution here. Calling Stone with Mika also very much symbolizes that I don't have Judgmental Recovery, which in Derek's words is just Pot of Greed. But we still get to go into this like this. We've now killed both tokens, and we're going to go ahead and do that Decree of Absolution. So now, if Robert did have a Falling into the Cracks of Time, that would have been a really good time to use it, because I won't generate the extra tokens off of the Messiah. Do hit the secret rare once again. I have 3 stones, so I get to target up to 3 things. So I can tap down his 1 blocker and give my other 2 tokens swiftness. The reason why I'm not giving Messiah swiftness is because ultimately it doesn't matter, because I believe at this game I do have Light of Solari in hand, and so we just plan on doing mastery there. So swing in a token for 6, swing in a token for 6, swing in a token for 4, take Robert down to 2,400 life, and then use Messiah for Light of Solari, or Judgment of Solari, with 2 modes. So we can do the modes to clear both of his tapped guys off the board, as well as do 300 damage to him for every card in his hand, and I'll gain that much life. And I believe at this point he had 7 cards in his hand, so this is going to be 2,100 damage off of Judgment of Solari. Like I said, keeping your hand full against this card is not great. You're a blue deck, so the cancels available to you are pretty mediocre in terms of against a non-quick cast 2-drop chant. Robert trying to see if there might be a card in his hand that he wants to get rid of that doesn't cantrip, just to take less damage. Ultimately, though, it doesn't seem like there is. So we're going to see that swing just like that, take him down to 300 and myself back up to 51. So going into this turn, and the biggest threat to going to Robert right now is the fact that Messiah is a flyer. She's a J ruler and a flyer. And in water, there's not much hard J ruler removal outside of, again, Deus Ex enters the Game of Gods. And we just haven't seen those from Robert this game. Any Deus Ex enters the Game of Gods, you can reveal a 1-drop machine and kill a J ruler. But ultimately, if he doesn't find a way to get that off the board, he's just dead to the flyer. So we see him go in here to play, I believe, the remote control Knights. And then looking at his hand, you see it looks like a 4Cs in there potentially to draw more cards. He asks if Messiah is a flyer, or kind of looking at his next lines, realizes that Messiah is a flyer, and then says, yeah, I don't have anything against that. There's nothing in my hand that can get me there, so that is going to be the game. So that is the match. Hope you guys enjoyed it. The deck profile for Mika Token Spam will be up later this week. And until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.